On this episode of Resiweek, Global Cachet has some Wi-Fi solutions for you. Vin Bruno moves to Rayva, and Apple announces their HomePod. All this and more on this episode of Resiweek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
This is Resiweek episode 70, Weakest Link.
This is Resiweek.
Welcome to Resiweek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Alex Capri Cilantro. I totally messed that up this time. Darn.
It's all right.
He's the co-founder and CEO of Josh AI. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Sorry, we're mid. If anyone doesn't know, we record this Mondays around 3, and WWDC's on, and they're about to announce something pretty cool. So I'm slightly distracted. Next, we have Haggai Feiner, the CEO of Access Networks. How are you, sir?
I am well.
Excellent. Where are you coming to us from today?
It
doesn't look like the normal digs.
Yeah, Eastern Pennsylvania. This is our new office. Actually, up here, we're going to build out an apartment right behind me in the 3rd floor loft. And so I'm here today, and I'm on an LT connection.
I love it. And last but not least, filling in for Mr. Bronner, who is skipping on us today, we have the one and only Tim Albright. He is the founder of AVNation, our little deal here.
How are you, sir? I am well. I'm a little distracted with a $7,000 Apple Pro or MacBook Pro?
$7,000 Mac Pro in space gray
that
with
neither
up
of
to
us need.
18 Xeon cores.
Neither of us need.
All 4 of us need it.
Haggai could use it. Alex absolutely could use it. You and I don't need it.
I totally need it.
You don't.
For this, think how much better our podcast would be with 18 Xeon processors.
It wouldn't.
All right, guys, let's jump right in to a couple of things. This comes to us from CE Pro and Lisa Montgomery. Global Cachet is helping dealers prosper with retrofit projects. Now, as you read through this story, you'll see that it's mainly focusing on this Wi-Fi additional helping part, I guess, from Global Cachet that allows dealers to connect to smart devices that maybe don't have a network connection there. I don't want to dig into the product or how it works or all that fun stuff, but what I do want to talk about is how important it is for dealers and integrators like us to find these products that fix and solve problems. Alex, obviously with Josh IA, you do a ton of really, really cool stuff, but often you have to run into situations where you don't have a wireless control point, a wired control point somewhere, and you need these solution parts to make this work.
Oh, absolutely. We've been huge fans of Global Cachet for a while now, and we've been partners for at least a couple of years. We use their products in maybe 10 or 20% of our installs. And it's just an amazing bridge across IP to IR, RS-232, and now with the contact closures, this is just really great for us. So I'm super excited about this announcement for sure.
Haggai, dealing that you deal with networks and very, very solid systems, how do products like this fit into your deployment scheme when you realize that all of a sudden you need a bunch of these types of Wi-Fi products to make systems that probably should be wired work?
Well, I think that's a good thing. I think that all these products are welcome on our job because they help solve a problem. And when you install the right network backbone, then you can attach whatever else you want to it, and the network won't have an issue. So I think it's a good thing. And definitely if you think about new housing starts versus existing retrofit jobs, I don't know the exact statistics, but just in this conversation, we know that there are more retrofit jobs out there to be done than new housing starts. So we need an answer to any type of scenario.
Now, how important is it for dealers to realize and kind of plan for this type of additional Wi-Fi connectivity that traditionally they're not thinking about as they're deploying a network in a retrofit?
Well, if you didn't engineer the solution and you didn't think about the network before you went out to the house to install it, most likely you're going to run into some issues at some point. Either you don't have enough coverage. These devices, the secret to good Wi-Fi is not necessarily in the strong access point you have, but really the weakness is right here, is the ability of this device or global Cachet or any other wireless product to communicate back to the access point. So your actual signal to noise ratio is measured by your weakest link, which is your device. And so if your network is not properly deployed, you didn't account for these types of products or added extensions, because we're selling a network today, but more and more products are going to be added to it tomorrow. So if we didn't plan on that stuff and we're just covering, for example, laptops with a little more transmission power, then those new devices that have smaller radios and almost, if you will, a weaker voice will not function properly when they get installed. So you have to think about that stuff.
Very good. Tim, stuff like this where dealers are jumping into, like this story talks about, kind of a newer market for them. They hadn't been as heavy into retrofits. How important is it for dealers to not just jump into it, but kind of taking what Alex and Haggai said, but planning out and knowing what you're getting into as you jump into that, in this case, retrofit style market?
You're talking about the product or just getting into retrofits in general?
No, just the projects in general, and planning that out, not just, bull rushing into something or into a new avenue.
We had the last, when I was a tech manager, we purchased an old building. When I say old, it was 110 years old. It was used, good Lord, the late 1800s, early 1900s for plumbing fixtures creation. Converted it all into classrooms and auditoriums. That was a wonderful retrofit, but oh my gosh, did we have to have drawings, and did we have to understand what the heck we were going into? And I say that, but Haggai is, if you're watching the video, Haggai is doing a retrofit right now. But there's two things with this: is a little bit of the global Cachet, but in general, retrofitting is not just understanding the cable pulls and what you want to have where. It's understanding the structure of your building, right? And Haggai and Alex can both talk way over my head when it comes to wireless and Wi-Fi on this. But materials they used 100 years ago were not necessarily concerned with the wireless access points and with those signals. They probably, first of all, they didn't know about it. Secondly, they couldn't care less. So you have to understand it and talk to, if you don't know, talk to somebody. Ask what the stuff is made of, right? What kind of material was this? And then talk to somebody, again, who understands this material, understands wireless access, understands the signal, and says, okay, you know what? Here's what my building is made of. I'm not just talking about the walls in between, but I'm talking about the actual structure, right? Again, go back to Haggai's building right now. He's got an awful lot of metal above him, right? And what looks to be concrete walls. I would not want to be the person engineering that wireless system.
Very good.
We took the ceilings down, so now it's just an open shell, and probably a couple of APs would cover all 10,000 square feet here. But before that point, we had a lot of metal in the ceiling, because the metal mesh is what held up all of the slat and layers.
Yep.
And it was insane just to watch all of it come down, literally hauling away tons of steel and tons of lat along with it, just because we needed to expose the ceiling. But I knew, obviously, much better for our Wi-Fi to tear this down. But in a lot of situations you walk into as an integrator, you can't tear the ceiling down. And the walls here are 2 feet thick. It's all literally stone and concrete. And so you have to plan this out. And again, you have to plan for the weakest link.
Well, and imagine if you walk into a home that's that, right? You and I talked about this last year at CEDIA, Haggai, where, you've got, let's say that architecturally, you've got glass brick, right? Or you've got concrete and steel. walls within the home, or brick within the home with concrete, or mortar holding that up. Deploying a wireless system in that scenario is not going to be kind to your wireless. And so that's when you go, okay, so I need an access point in this room. I need an access point in this room if we're going to successfully do it.
Sure, and at the same level, on the same point, deploying too many access points is also not good. And especially with 802.11ac, using 5 gigahertz and you're using most of that allocation of the spectrum for one channel. If you're using 80 megahertz channels, you can only have 2 of them coexist. Your third AP immediately interferes with one of the first 2. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful, and you want those things to overlap, but you want enough distance between them so that they don't crush each other. They don't fight over airtime.
Yeah. Well, again, it just comes down to proper planning. So, gentlemen, let's move on to a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. This is, if you have missed the news, Vin Bruno stepped away from CEDIA as their CEO, and that was about 2 weeks ago, if memory serves, and has joined Rayva on the board. Now, Vin has been involved with Rayva back when they were launching. He and Theo had worked together on this. Haggai, I'm going to come to you on this first. Obviously, you. Why are you laughing? You've had some. Exactly. You've had some. We do it in order. Alex had the first story. You get the first word on the second story. There was no weird forethought. Don't make it weird. But obviously, you've had some interactions with Vin. What does this mean for Rayva with somebody like Vin joining the board of directors, who's had his, we'll say, his reach?
Sure. I think that's a great thing for them, because Vin does have reach and he has contacts, he knows a lot of people, he's well traveled, he's well known in the industry, and that's exactly who you want on your board, people that can help you move your ship forward. So I think it's a good thing, and it's going to translate to more awareness and ultimately more business for Rayva.
Now, does this, obviously you can't really talk about a Vin story right now without mentioning CEDIA, just because it's been so close. Mm-hmm. With Vin stepping down or stepping away or whatever, no one has a full picture on that for obvious reasons. But what does it mean for CEDIA going forward? And you're on the board, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So obviously, CEDIA as a company has had a lot of changes the last little bit, between selling the expo and then obviously losing Vin and having 1 or 2 other people step down. What's the direction for CEDIA going forward? What do we expect to see from CEDIA?
That's a good question. So where do I start? I think we live in a world where technology moves quickly, and CEDIA historically has been relatively slow to adapt compared to the amount of technology that's come out to the market. And if you look at the products and services that CEDIA is offering to its members, these are things that are constantly improving. And so what I think you will see, since we're now in the midst of a process where we are working on CEDIA's strategy going forward, and where CEDIA will be in the next 5 years, and what are we going to do in order to provide our members with the goods and services that they're looking for, you're going to see a changing CEDIA. And one of those efforts is, the sale of the show is going to lead to less resources within CEDIA focused on the show, and those very resources being focused on what the members' needs. And so I think ultimately CEDIA will have to make some tough choices. Is it going to take a stand, for example, when it comes to member certifications? Are we going to start classifying our integrators at, level A, B, and C based on their skills, their ability to manage specific size projects, or, how advanced, regardless of size, those projects get? These are all questions on the table, right? What is CEDIA's role within the industry going forward? And so I think all these changes are kind of, they create a pivotal point for CEDIA. And I see the future as a bright future. I know that there's some feedback out there and a lot of people that are not happy with the way things are going. But I think the best thing to do is to reach out, because Dennis, our chairman, is available. I am not authorized in any way to speak on behalf of the board. I'm giving you my viewpoint as an individual. But I think Dennis has done a good job communicating to the world where CEDIA is going. Sometimes there tends to be speculation. CEDIA cannot, as an entity, discuss HR issues. So a lot of these things that revolve around HR issues or questions cannot be answered publicly. But at the same time, if you have strategy questions, absolutely. So we're in the middle of this process. It's going to get wrapped up, I believe, towards the end of the year. And we will have a guide, basically, that tells us where we're going based on the strategy process that we're doing with Rebecca Humkes, and the board is heavily involved in that.
Alex, as somebody who, Josh AI kind of caters to a higher end, shall we say, of clientele, and definitely not that entry level range. Do you see CEDIA, because there has been some rumbles that CEDIA needs to get back to that high end custom and get out of the DIY? Is that something that, with your experience in that ultra high end market, is that something that you see serves CEDIA as a channel best?
It's a complicated answer, and there's a lot to it. We have our average home around 8 to 10,000 square feet or larger. These are very premium homes who work with the top tier integrators, and yet we still see Sonos in at least a third of our homes. And so I think there's a really fuzzy line between what is DIY mass market versus what is that, sort of pro installer base. And I think what it means to be a CEDIA member and a CEDIA installer is going to evolve over the next couple of years. But we can't discount what's going on by the Apples and the Googles and the Amazons. And I think we'll talk later in the podcast about Apple's announcement with their version of the Echo. And so my viewpoint is the homes that we go into that are professionally installed with the top tier integrators are real custom solutions. And it's all about solving the problem for the customer in the most elegant way possible. Sometimes it's using a mass market product, and sometimes it's not. It really just depends.
Tim, kind of what Alex said there hits the key point of what CEDIA means to me, at least, is finding an eloquent solution for a problem. Now, I don't think that matters if it's a small entry level project or a multi-million-dollar home. Finding a good solution for the problem from a technology base is really what we do. Is that the focus that CEDIA should have?
I think so. And here's the thing: one caveat here. I am not a residential installer, right? My AV chops was in programming, and so my view comes from Buddy Rich Fregosa, Joe Whitaker, and Stephen Bronner and the guys. And I'll use you and Rich and Joe as examples of this, because you guys have three distinctive different places, and your markets and your customers are distinctively different. All of you have told me stories from time to time about just solving a freaking problem, right? And Rich Fregosa is a wonderful programmer and calls himself a digital concierge, right? So his clients go to him, and he's a problem solver. And whether the solution is a Sonos, right, or it's a $100,000 distributed music system, whichever one is going to get the job done and cause the clients the least amount of pain or zero pain. That's the bottom line, right? You guys don't want to get a call at 2:00 on Super Bowl Sunday saying, "Oh my gosh, this is busted."
Sure, but there's also a problem with standards. There is no standard for a lot of what we do.
There's not a standard on Pro and Resi.
Yeah.
Well, and
standards are great because everybody's got one.
Let me share something as a homeowner, all right? So my wife and I bought a house. It's a good size house, and it was pre-wired by the security, the alarm guy, who pre-wired.
That sounds fantastic.
He wired all of the home audio equipment and whatever controls that he had, and a lot of keypads. He put so many holes in the wall with just blank plates on them, and a wire that's going back into a cabinet in the living room that's relatively shallow, about a little over a foot deep. You cannot install anything here and there. There's no ventilation. It's going to work for what he wants to install, this alarm guy, which is absolutely not what I want to install. And it's not best practice because none of this equipment is ventilated, right? He didn't do any calculations. He didn't do any engineering. Our industry, combined industries, if you will, have no standard. And now yours truly had to have his house rewired for what I want, which you could say, okay, well, not everybody's going to have a Crestron DM system, but you know what? Everybody's going to have a network, right? So instead of having the network run into a cabinet in the living room, I had to rewire my house and have everything run into now a dedicated AV closet, and have it ventilated and have it, have all the wires terminated. This is what's missing. And also, as an individual, what I see is a place for CEDIA to step in and say, hey, here are some standards. There are basic guidelines for what a modern, smart, automated, however you want to call it, home with technology in it is going to need. And it starts with power, and it starts with Cat 6, and it starts with ventilation, or whatever guides you want to create, we have not created them. And the homeowners suffer. And then the integrator that comes into the job and is chosen to do the project has to rewire. It takes time. It's dust. It's cutting walls. This is my pain.
Well, and here's the thing. You made a very good point. The homeowner suffers, and that right there is what I've gotten from all my relationships in the residential world, is giving the homeowner the utmost, the best system possible that causes them the least amount of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes
it's a desirable result,
whatever that means.
And it doesn't matter what you use, right?
You're hitting the biggest point, Haggai, and Tim together, is that we don't need the homeowners to get turned off because they were sold a faulty system or just a bad design. Any smart home should have a standard that essentially it doesn't matter what gear you put in, we can achieve that. We can, whether it be Sonos, whether it be M&S, whether it be Crestron, it doesn't matter where you sit on that spectrum. You should be able to plug it in and make it work. Because outside of the fact that obviously everything that's available in this industry, if you were a regular, Johnny homeowner walking into that house and going, I can't put anything in here other than an iPhone dock, are you going to want to go through that expense and go through that hassle of doing this again?
You have dead wire in the wall. I have thousands of feet of wire that's dead in the wall, and I have a bunch of blank plates that no one's going to use that I got to now close up because it looks ugly, because I have a Nest thermostat and
all Acme everywhere.
Another blank.
It's like being a teenager again.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Makes no sense.
Well, let's move on.
My point is, we can do better, right?
We can do better.
This is where CEDIA. You want to know where CEDIA needs to go, in my opinion, is to a place where we do right by the homeowner as an industry that's creating standards of what it means, regardless of what you're installing, to deliver the experience for the homeowner. And that's where people argue with me, well, Access Network sells expensive networks, and I can do what you do with a $50 router. Well, okay, you can say that, but I can tell you that what we deliver ultimately is customer experience, right? It's the end user experience, and the fact that they don't have to worry about it. It always works. And if there is a problem, we know how to solve it, and we know how to solve it quick. And that's what we deliver. If you think you can deliver that with a $50 router, go and you can try.
Have fun. Have fun.
Have fun with that.
One thing to add really quick, we did start the discussion about Vin. And while I don't want to necessarily divulge more than I should, I did have breakfast with him a week ago. And one thing that he shared with me was he is very focused on staying within the community. And I think this Rayva announcement is a big example of that. So the idea that he wants to stay on sort of this, the pro side of things, but really he's all about innovating and pushing the limits. And he's been working with us in an unofficial capacity for quite some time. I think we're going to see Vin staying involved in companies like Rayva and others. And I'm personally glad that he's, still going to be part of the CEDIA community, even if he's not officially part of CEDIA anymore.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic news. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to something that kind of broke just as we were leading into this. If you are unaware, WWDC was on today.
What is WWDC?
It is the Worldwide Developer Conference. That is for Mr. Ben. It is Apple's big developer conference where they bring in an absolute ton of media people and developers to talk about some of their new technologies, where they're going as a company. Couple quick highlights. They've announced an iMac Pro as well as some new OS updates, including High Sierra. They're getting very creative with their naming. And if you do anything, at least watch Phil's little commentary on the naming nomenclature. But the other thing that we were waiting for, which even came with a very nice little hit of nostalgia with a one more thing from Mr. Cook, was the HomePod. Tim's throwing it up right there. It is it's coming to us from Engadget's live stream. It is a $349 kind of whole home speaker thing. And I say thing because we don't exactly know exactly what it's going to be and what it's going to do, but it will respond to Hey Siri with some local recognition from, I believe, 6 microphones in it. It'll do a bunch of other cool things like playing music and all that jazz, as well as acting as a HomeKit base, which I think is probably one of the biggest things to come out of this. Now, this is something we kind of talked about leading into the show. Gentlemen, and again, obviously we won't know what this does, how well it works, all that fun stuff until it's officially released in December to the US, the UK, and Australia. Nothing for Canada again. Yeah, as Haggai shakes his head. But is this the move that Apple needed to make to stop losing ground dramatically to Echo and Google Home?
I'll just jump in. It's something that we've thought a lot about and even forecasted almost 2 years ago now that this is something they should do. What's interesting is I would almost say they're going up against more of the Sonoses of the world necessarily than the Google Homes and the Amazon Echoes. And what I mean by that is there was a lot of rumors that Apple was looking into possibly acquiring Sonos. They had taken money from KKR. The Apple Store was basically selling their product line. And the way that this product has been announced so far from Apple is featuring all of the music capabilities. They really built it as a speaker, as a music player. It's about 7 inches tall. It's coming in both black and white. In many ways, it resembles your Sonos Play 1. And they're also touting this sort of multi-room music syncing, which we really haven't seen from many people other than Sonos in this capacity. And while, yes, you can voice command it like an Amazon Echo or Google Home, they really downplayed that. And maybe they did that to try to separate the gap between them and the Echo. But I see this much more as going right up against the Sonos Play 1 personally.
I have something to add. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but this looks like Apple doing Me Too instead of Apple doing a Me First. And I'm looking for that Me First. So what's new under the sun? All right, so it's an Apple product. So what? Give me something innovative. Give me something new. Give me something I didn't see or I didn't think about that's going to rock my world. And I'm not seeing that, so I'm sorry. Down.
I would argue that has been a problem that they've had for a couple of years now, though, where the innovation seems to be, and anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge Apple nut. So I will probably get one of these no matter what.
But yeah, you step into my Tesla, right? And you take that for a drive. It is a completely new experience. And that's what I'm looking for from Apple. I'm looking for a new experience.
Does this potentially give them the foundation to start that new experience?
No. It to Haggai's point. Now, to Haggai's point, this is nothing new under the sun. This is a Me Too. Alex mentioned Sonos. I would also say that they may have been downplaying the Echo in the home comparison, but I still think it's there. The fact that HomeKit is they've been working on that for a while, and other folks have been playing around with HomeKit and releasing some products around that. I think that's there as well, right? They've seen some of the successes that Echo has had, and they didn't have to do it, right? They didn't have to do anything. But I still remember reading, Jobs's biography after he passed away, talking about the TV. That was 6 years ago now. This is not, it's not anything new, but and I'm not still sure that they had to do it. But I'm also going to get one, Matt, because I'm really heavily involved and invested in voice control, and I'm interested in. I'd like to see how it works.
What I find interesting is if this becomes the true foundation of a functional HomeKit system, I look at it as the smart home foundation has so many products and so many technologies and so many different things out there, but for your average user, they have a hard time making it work. If this works, and I see you smiling, I see you laughing too, Haggai. If this works, and if this gives new life to HomeKit, the installed base of Apple users and iPhone users and just people that are in that Mac ecosystem, the potential for it to kind of, I don't want to say blow Sonos out of the water, because I don't think it'll do that, but the native built-in, I see you pointing, jump in.
So where do you see this shaping the cutoff point where the DIY pushes more into the DIFM, do it for me, professional install realm? Yeah. Do you see that line now shifting where the client can do more on their own and doesn't need an integrator until a certain point, but that certain point is farther down the road?
I think it does, because, for example, we have a client in town who is he's a smart guy, but he is inept with any sort of real technology, or like he'll pay someone to change the light bulbs. He cannot figure that kind of stuff out. He's clumsy like that, but he can work his HomeKit, and he'll add stuff to his HomeKit system real well, fine, all by himself. Where I find it interesting is he's that guy who's a do it for me, except for HomeKit. HomeKit he can handle. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think it does shift that line a little bit down the road.
I think the problem is it's still a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle.
Oh,
exactly. Yep.
But does he need the whole puzzle?
Right.
Is that what that client's looking for? Is that what that DIY client is looking for?
We're going into a world where we want more technology and we want less to do with it. I want everything automated. I want it to work, but I want more stuff. Here's the new gadget. I want that, and I want the other. And I got a camera system. I got an alarm system online. I got a Jandy system in my pool. I even have our propane tank now online, believe it or not.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
So I want all this stuff, but I don't want to mess with it. I want it to just work. And until someone shows up here and gives me that very desire, fulfills it, an integrator is always going to have business. And I don't think that point is coming anytime soon.
No, I agree with that.
And personally, just to jump in, where I get excited here, it's a couple things. At one side, with Apple putting this product out, it means more innovation around far-field microphones, beamforming, and all of this technology in general, which only helps move things forward. The other thing is it gives more manufacturers a motivation to build API integrations that might hook into both Apple and Amazon and Google. And all of a sudden, we're going to see more connected devices that have possibly a more standardized communication protocol. So I think Apple getting into the play is going to help move the industry, even if Apple's product does feel like a me too at this point.
Okay, fair enough.
I like it. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap there. Thank you all for joining us on this episode. Alex, where can people connect with you?
Website's josh.ai. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at josh.ai.
Excellent. Haggai, thanks again for joining us from lovely Pennsylvania. Where can people find you?
accessca.com.
Beautiful. Tim, where can people connect with you?
The Twitters is TD Tim David Albright on the Twitters. So
excellent. Thanks again, gentlemen, for joining us. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv. You'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our underwriters, including Access Networks, and thank them. We're incredibly thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. Thanks again for joining us. That's all the time we have for this episode of Resiweek.